Okay, class, now we're going to do our last video, the video you've been waiting for this whole time. So what we're going to do is set up a certificate server, and we're going to set up a web cluster and use and secure it with the certificate. We're also going to create certificates for the rest of our machines and our user accounts. The reason why I'm doing this web cluster is because a lot of this stuff is automatic. It happens in the background. You don't get to see anything happen in regards to certificates. Like when a user creates a certificate, he creates it automatically and they use it automatically. There's nothing that you need to do or even see. So I'm just using these two web servers to demonstrate certificates. So the first thing I'm going to do is check our IP addresses out. So for our CA, the IP address is 172.16.0.7. The prefix is 21-bit subnet mask. The default gateway is 172.16.0.1. The interface alias is Ethernet. I'm going to set my DNS servers up, DNS servers for this client. Guys, I hit tab too many times. Say if I hit tab here, tab again, if I want to go back, hit shift tab, that'll go back. I'm going to use DC1 and 2 because this is on the west side. Now I'm going to rename it and join it to the domain. While it's rebooting, I'm going to pause. It's rebooted, so I'm going to make sure I sign in as a domain admin. I have my policy, so it got the background. Because we've never touched the service before, I'm going to install graphically. I gotta wait till that bar stops. Add roles and features. I'm going to do Active Directory Certificate Service. Add the tools to manage it as well. So when you click on some of these sub-role features, it's going to add some, when you click on some of these sub roles, it's going to add some additional features. So just click yes. This is my actual certificate authority. This is a website to pass out policies. This is the website, the actual web service. This is the web service for enrolling for certificates. And this is my online responder. Basically, the online responder is responsible for letting other clients know whether a certificate is still valid, if it's been revoked or not. Basically, when you issue a certificate, it has a begin date and an expiration date. But if you revoke it before that expiration date, that's not part of the certificate. So this is going to be a service that allows other machines to check if a certificate's been revoked. Now, we're not going to install this device enrollment. This is for network devices like routers and switches. We're not going to do anything with that, so I'm not going to bother installing it. So these are going to be web applications, these three items right here. So it automatically needs a web server. Restart if needed. Now listen, the very first time you set up the certificate server, it's going to create something called a root certificate. That root certificate is tied to the domain membership and the computer name. So if you try to change the computer name or the domain membership after this has been installed, it won't allow you. So you need to make sure you're joined to the domain, you have your computer name set up before you even install this service. Because if you change the computer name, it makes the root certificate invalid. If that's invalid, all the other certificates that this CA has issued are invalid. So Microsoft has prevented you from changing the computer name or changing the domain membership. So you make sure you have that done before the installation. This is going to take a while, so I'm going to pause. Okay, it's done installing. So now I need to configure the server. So I'm going to click on this link. Now it's going to set up the server and the first certificate, that root certificate. So I can do it as a standalone server or part of Active Directory. So I'm going to do it part of Active Directory. And I'm going to use my domain credentials. That's why I need to be signed in as a domain admin. So here's those role services that we've installed. The problem is this next to the last role requires your web server and your certificate, excuse me, the web server needs a certificate to host itself because you don't want to pass out web certificates on an unsecure website. The only problem is you don't have a certificate if you try to install it right away. So you have to go through all the other items first, then come back and install this last item. So when I check these boxes, I'll get an error when I check that. So I have to do everything else but that and then come back and do this later. Because I can't set up that enrollment website to pass out web certificates on an unsecure website. So I need a certificate to secure that website. So it's like what came first, the chicken or the egg? The certificate server needs to be done first, create the first certificate, then I can set up the website to pass out additional certificates and securing it with the certificate. So I'm going to click Next. It's going to be an Enterprise CA, meaning part of Active Directory. And I have two types of certificate servers, a root CA and a subordinate CA. In real networks, what you do is you set up a root CA, get everything configured, you issue a certificate for a subordinate CA, and then from that point on, all certificates are issued by the subordinate CA. You're supposed to take your root server offline and secure it in a secure location preferably by a third party, like Iron Mountain, where you can ship off that server to have them store it for you. And when your certificate for your subordinate CA is about to expire, you have them bring your root CA back, plug it back into the network, issue a new certificate, then unplug it. The only way to secure your root CA is to take it offline, physically disconnect it from the power, physically disconnect it from the network. Because if this machine gets compromised, all the certificates that you've issued from this machine will get compromised. So it's always best to have a root CA, issue a ticket for your subordinate, then take your root CA offline. At that point, your subordinate CA will be issuing certificates, and when that certificate for the subordinate CA expires, bring your root CA back, plug it back in, issue a new certificate, and at that point, you'll be good to go to take the root CA offline again. So now we're going to create our first private key, part of our um, root key, and it's going to use SHA-256. The key length will be 2048. This is why you can't change the name of your computer. Once this is done, if you change your computer name, it will make all the certificates invalid. And this CA is going to be, my root certificate will be good for 5 years. We don't make actual changes to our database. What we do is when we create a new certificate, we make that change in our log file, transaction log file, and when it's safe to do so, Active Directory will update the database for us. We're going to use window authentication to get this certificates. It's asking me to choose the first certificate. It's not created yet, so I can't do that. So I'm going to choose a certificate later. When I go through that last item in the wizard, it will automatically fill this out for me. Confirmation, confirm everything is correct, and click configure. And again, this takes a few minutes. Okay, it's done, so I'm going to close this out. Now it's prompting me to go through and configure that last service that we didn't configure. Click yes. Now I can choose this item. Click next. It's asking where do I want to get a certificate from. We're going to use RCA because I need a certificate for my web server. Where do I get it from? This CA. Use window authentication to get it. And that window authentication could be your user account or your computer account. Remember, your computer can get a certificate too. And your computer has a computer account just like your user account, and it can use that account to get a certificate as well. Now, in real life, what I would do is I would set up a managed service account. So you don't want to host your web server using your admin account. If your admin account gets jeopardized, if this service gets jeopardized, your web server or your certificate server gets jeopardized, at that point they would have admin rights. So when you start a service, I'm going to go to it. You have to pick a user account to run that service. So right now, our web server is running under our local system account, not the administrator account, a system account. If you look at the DNS client, or I'll just use the DHCP client, it's running as a local service as well. So in real life, I would set up a service account just for this service, and I would make sure that they're part of the IISI user group, Internet Information Service, Internet User. You know, when I go into this website, I sign in. The web server signs me in on its behalf automatically because there's no modern computer that you can connect to that you don't have to sign in. So it automatically signs you in. When you log into the web server on a Microsoft box, it logs you into a user in that group because that group has rights to all the web pages. So that's why you have to create a managed service account, add them to that group so they have access to all the web pages that they can pass out to clients. When a client connects to you, you'll sign them in with that account and allow them to access those web pages. Just to keep my life simple, I'm just going to use the built-in service account. Click Next. There's my certificate I can use for my web server. I have to click on it, click Next, and configure. I'm going to pause. No, it's done. Okay, so I'm going to close this out and open up my CA. Okay, so now we're going to create some templates. I'm going to expand my CA. Each certificate that this CA can issue is different for every type of certificate that's needed. If I have a user certificate, it's going to be different format than a web certificate, which will be a different format than a computer type certificate. So it would be too much for us to know the format of every type of certificate. So what we can do is create templates, and at that point, when a request for a certificate comes out, it'll match it to a template and create the right formatted certificate for us. So it really makes our lives a lot easier. And I've never actually had to go create custom templates. We're just going to use the default ones that are part of the certificate server. So I'm going to right click certificate templates and go manage. And you never want to make a change to the default certificates. You always want to copy it and make a change to the copy. So I'm going to duplicate the computer template. Under the General tab, I'm going to call it Contoso all in uppercase letters. The reason being is if I put my domain name in front, they'll be listed alphabetically and all my certificates will be together. So I want to publish the certificate in Active Directory. So I'm going to go to three tabs: General, Subject Name, and Security. So I'm going to publish this in Active Directory. I'm going to go to Subject Name field. Because this is a computer type certificate, I don't have an email field. So there's nothing for me to do here. Then under the Security tab, for authenticated users, I want to enroll and auto-enroll. Click OK. Let's do one for users. Right click, duplicate the certificate because I don't want to make changes to that. Go to the General tab. I'm going to name it Contoso. Subject Name tab. In real production networks, you have email servers. So when you create an email server, it changes something called the schema, and at that point, it adds an email field. A schema is a definition of an object. Like a user object will have a name field, an address field, a location field, things like that. When you add email server, it changes the schema and adds a new field called email for all user objects. The problem is I don't have an email server. So if I try to build a certificate using this template, it's going to give me an error because it's not going to find an email field. So I'm going to uncheck these two boxes just because we don't have an email server in our environment. So I went to the General tab, put in the name Contoso. Subject name tab, I unselected the two email fields. Under Security tab, for authenticated users, I want to read, enroll, and auto enroll. Click OK. Now let's do one for our domain controllers. I'm just doing a few examples. When you go out in the workforce, you're going to create templates for whatever your environment needs. I'm just going to give you a few examples. So I'm going to go to General tab, put in Contoso, all uppercase. It's automatically checked publish in Active Directory. I'm going to go to the subject name field or tab. It's not checked because this is a computer type template. Under security, for authenticated users, I want to do nothing because this only domain controller should get this certificate. So I'm going to go to domain controllers and say enroll in auto enroll. So you don't want to allow anyone to grab a domain controller certificate unless you're a domain controller. I can do one for OCSP. This is the certificate for my online responder. This online responder is going to be responsible for telling clients if a certificate has been revoked or not. So when I create this list of revoked certificates, I need to make sure that I sign that list and they know it came from me. I don't want some rogue certificate server saying all my certificates has been revoked. So I need to sign that revocation list. So I need to create a template for this. Again, I'm going to duplicate it, go to the General tab, put Contoso in front, publish it in Active Directory. Under the subject name field, make sure the two email boxes are unchecked. Under security, only one machine is going to be the online responder. That's the only machine that should enroll in auto enroll. So I'm going to click add, location, sorry, not location, object type. I'm going to check computer. I want to look for a computer account. I'm going to type CA $. Click OK. Maybe not. Click OK. I don't know why CA $, didn't work, but it should have. The $, indicates it's a domain account as opposed to a standalone computer account. So that's what that $, means. So that machine should enroll in auto enroll in only that machine because that's the only machine that needs a certificate. Click OK. The last one I want to do is a web server. Guys, I could do workstation authentication. There's a whole bunch of these that I can do. Actually, we'll do Kerberos authentication. We'll do Kerberos authentication and workstation authentication. Duplicate it, General tab, publish in Active Directory, go to subject name field, make sure they're unselected, security, Everyone needs this, so authenticated users, enroll and auto enroll. If you signed in, whether you're a computer account or user account, you're dynamically added to this group. Click OK. Let's do workstation authentication, general, publish in Active Directory, subject name tab, make sure they're unselected, security tab, authenticated users, enroll and auto enroll. We could do one for the administrator account. There's all kind of ones. You could do a recovery key for encryption. So if someone encrypts some documents and they get fired or their accounts get deleted by accident, you can use this recovery key to unencrypt everything on your network. The last thing I want to do is just to show you something actually work, because all this is going to be automatic. Let's do the administrator too. Might as well. I'm going to duplicate this because I did user, might as well do administrator. It takes a second. General, subject name, unselect these two items. Domain administrators, enroll and auto enroll. Enterprise administrators, enroll and auto enroll. Administrators, enroll and auto enroll. We don't want to allow authenticated users to get admin certificates. Okay, all these certificates down here, it's going to happen automatically. You're not going to see anything. All of a sudden, the certificates will just start showing up and being used. So I want to create one certificate where you actually have to do manual stuff and you can see how it works. So I'm going to duplicate the web service certificate. Under the General tab, put Contoso, publish in Active Directory. Guys, I didn't mention this. The template name doesn't have any spaces. That's normal. Don't try to put a space in there. It won't work. The template display name will have spaces. Subject name field. Look at this. This isn't even, you can't make any changes here. Basically, the changes are going to be made when they request a certificate, because there's no way for this to know what the web service's name is. So that's why this is a little bit different. For security, I'm just going to do authenticated users. But in reality, what I would do is create a group called web servers, put all my web servers in that group, and make sure they can enroll and auto enroll. But just to keep things simple, I'm going to do authenticated users. Subject name field, there's nothing for me to do. General field, I put in Contoso, publish in Active Directory. Security, authenticated users, enroll and auto enroll. Click OK. So now we've created a few custom templates. I'm going to close this out. Then I'm going to add those templates to this list right here so I can actually issue certificates based on those templates. So I'm going to right click, go to New, Certificate Templates to Issue. If this list is blank, reboot the machine. That's all you need to do. Come back here, it won't be blank. Oh, well, mine isn't blank. This is kind of new, but I don't have any of my custom certificates. So, when in doubt, reboot. I'm going to pause while it's rebooting. Okay, so I'm going to sign in and try again. So I'm going to go to Tools, Certificate Authority, highlight Certificate Templates, say New Certificate Templates Issue. Now I see them. This is why I wanted you to put the Contoso in front of them, so you can be lazy. Hold down Shift. I spelled this one wrong, but it doesn't matter. And select all of your Contosos. Guys, if you have a typo like that, you go back to Manage. Actually, I'm going to do it just to show you how to do it. Yes, that's it. I did this intentionally to show you. That's what it is. So I'm going to delete this one. Go to Manage. Go to Properties. You can't make any changes. So I'm just going to delete it and redo it. Duplicate the template. Go to the General tab. Publish an Active Directory. Under the subject name field, make sure email is selected. Under security, this is for that OCSP. So I need to click Add. Object type. Check computer. Type CA. Enroll and auto enroll. Click OK. So now I can go and issue that certificate template. And again, it's not. There it is. I just closed it out and reopened it. It showed up. So there's the certificate template that I want to issue. Click OK. So here's the next thing I need to do. I need to tell everyone in my network that I have a certificate server. Right now, the only one that knows there's a certificate server partially is the certificate server itself. So I can go around to all these machines and tell them about that certificate server, or I could do it properly with a group policy. So I'm going to go to DC1. Sign in. Okay, I don't know why this keeps coming up every time I reboot my DC, but I'm not worried about it. I'm just going to try to relaunch it. Okay, so I'm going to go to Tools, Group Policy Management. I'm going to create a new group policy. Called Certificates. I'm going to modify it. Sorry, an advisor called me. Okay, so I'm editing the group policy for certificates. I'm going to Computer Configuration, Windows Settings, Security Settings, Public Key Policies. Just highlight it. These bottom three things we have to change. I'm going to click on the first one. We want them, we're going to configure an enrollment policy. We want them to look in Active Directory for the certificate server. The next one, we want them to trust our root certificate server. So basically, this is going to push out our root certificate to all of our machines in our network, so they trust that certificate and any certificate signed by that certificate. So I'm going to click OK. Third one, we want them to auto enroll, auto renew, and if we change a template, we want them to update their certificate based on the new template. Click OK. So we configured the last three items. So I'm going to go now to user configuration. Windows settings, that was for computer accounts. Now we're doing this for user accounts. So I'm going to go to user configuration, Windows settings, security settings, public key policies. I'm going to configure the last three, slightly different. Again, we want to find the certificate server in Active Directory. I'm going to go to the last one first. We want them to auto enroll for the certificates they qualify for. We want them automatically renewing their certificates. And we want them to update the certificates if we've updated the template. Click OK. And the last one is certificate roaming. Now, when a certificate gets created, like let's say I sit at one workstation and I create a certificate, it'll store that certificate locally. If I go to another workstation, it won't have that certificate for that user account. So what I want to do is enable this and allow my certificates to roam with me through Active Directory. Here is the only issue with this. You don't need to do this if you have a roaming profile, because it'll store it locally in your profile, but your profile is roaming, so it'll be on every machine that you sign into. So if you have a roaming profile, you really don't need to do this. We don't, so I'm just going to click OK. And it's saying, if you have a roaming profile, it might cause a problem. We don't, so we're not worried about it. Click OK. Now the policy is configured. I'm going to link it to all three domains. I'm going to link it to child domain, Contoso, my child domain, and a datum, because we want all three domains in our forest to use this certificate server. I don't want to create three certificate servers for three different domains in one forest. I can use one CA for the entire forest. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is give this time to replicate. So I'm going to pause the video, probably 15-20 minutes, so this fully replicates to the other side. Again, guys, I just booted up all my machines before I started this lab, so everything is running with the same time. I want to make sure if I do a GP update on these machines, they'll get that policy right away. But if I do a GP update over here, it's not going to really affect anything because DC3 and DC4 don't know about the policy yet. So I've got to wait till the policy gets replicated over here before I have these machines read the new policy. So I'm going to give it at least 15 minutes, maybe a half hour. So I'm going to pause the video, leave it set for a little bit. Okay, I'm going to try to see if the policy is over on the east side now. I'm going to open up the group policy management on DC3. So I can see the certificate policy, so I know it got replicated from the west side to the east. So now if I do GP update on any machine, I might not need to, but if I do, I know that all the machines will be able to get to the policy. So I'm going to sign back into the CA and do the last setup step. So I'm going to configure, first I'm going to do a GP update. Now I'm going to go to Tools. I'm still in the CA. I'm going to configure the online responder. So this is going to pass out, is going to create a list of all the certificates that I've revoked. So I'm going to click on Revocation Configuration, add a Revocation Configuration. Whatever your company name is. Use an existing CA to get my certificate to sign this, because I need to create this list and sign the list so they know it came from this CA. I'm going to browse for my certificate server. It found it. If it hasn't found it, even though I'm on the CA, it might not find it. You have to do that GP update. Click Next. Not only did it find the CA, it automatically found that certificate that I'm qualified for, because it was automatically created because this machine requests it, because it's an online responder. You might need to give it a little bit of time for that certificate to be created. So that's all you really need to do. Guys, I could go into this online responder once a day. I believe it goes and grabs Delta information, which is like global information about all the certificates. And then once a week, it goes and does a deep search of all the certificates that have been revoked. And then it publishes this list. And the clients who are verifying certificates automatically know to come to this online responder to figure if a certificate's been revoked. So I'm going back to my CA just to look at everything. I don't have any pending request. These are all the certificates my CA has issued so far, and you can see a lot of the stuff has been automatic. Nothing's been done on my part. You can see that I'm getting certificates from the child DC, from Adatum, from Contoso. So I could have stopped here and says everything is working, but I just wanted you to manually at least create one certificate for yourself. So I'm going to look on my network map. The CA is going to have, we're going to set up these two web servers to create a certificate. So I'm going to do 8.5 and 8.9 for WW1. So I'm going to go to WW1, go to local server. I'm going to call one NLB and one private. The NLB will be the lower interface and the private will be the higher interface. Have some sort of convention so you know. One 8.5, 21 bits for the subnet mask. 8.1 will be the gateway, and 3 and 2 will be the DNS servers. We're going to join it to the domain so it'll fix that. I should have clicked that file. So this will be 172.16.8.9, 21 bits for the subnet mask, 8.2 and 8.3 for the DNS. Now, a default gateway is the gateway of last resorts. It's the default path to get out. I shouldn't have two default gateways. But in this particular case, I'm going to put two default gateways and they're both going to point to the same address. Otherwise, things won't work properly, whether the normal network traffic won't be able to get out of the subnet or the NLB traffic won't be able to get out of the subnet. So it's going to give me a warning about having two separate gateways, but they're both pointing to the same address. So that's fine. So I'm going to join it to the domain and reboot. Now I'm going to do it for www2. Each of these machines have two network cards because I'm going to do load balancing. I'm going to set up like a cluster. Most web servers you connect to isn't one physical machine, it's multiple machines to handle the load. Sorry, class advising. Okay, so I'm on www2. Our IP addresses are 86 and 810. So I'm going to label this NLB for network load balance and private. And now I'm going to join it to the domain. Guys, if you get this error because we're getting to the limit of the eval copy, you can give yourself another 180 days. Software License Manager, SLMGR /rearm. And I have to reboot. So I'm going to do this before I rename. When the eval period is up, certain things stop working. So you can just do this to get another 180-day eval period. Now I'm going to rename and reboot. So I'm going to go back to ww1, sign in as the domain admin. I'm going to do the same to www2. I don't know why I keep doing this typo. So while 2's signing in, I'm going to go back to 1. So the bar stopped, so I'm going to go to Manage, Add Roles and Features. This is going to be a web server. Add the tools to manage it. And I want to add this feature called Network Load Balancing. And just walk through the wizard. Network load balancing is in CTS3392C, so if this is the first time seeing it, I'll go in more detail in the other class. So I'm going to do the same thing for www2. Web server, add the management features, then add an additional feature called network load balancing. We call it NLB right there. Restart if needed. I'm going to pause it while it's installing. Okay, it's done being installed on 2, so I'm going to check out 1. And it's done being installed on 1. I'm going to open up a command prompt. NLB relies a lot on layer 2 networking. So I want to make sure I can resolve the name by layer 2, which is just a NetBIOS broadcast. So I'm going to do ping www2. I want to make sure that I can get to www2 by short name. And I can. So basically broadcast and says who has this IP, www2 responded, so I know I can communicate with www2. So I'm going to open up NLB and configure the network load balancing. The other thing I want to point out is I currently have 2 IPs on this machine. One is going to be used for network load balancing, and one is going to be used for normal network traffic. And what we're going to do is add one IP that will be shared between 1 and 2 that's going to be used for our web service. So I'm going to right click. This interface looks old, but it's finicky setting up, but once it's set up, it's very stable. So I'm going to right click and create a new cluster. The first host will be www1. I'm going to connect to it. It's asking which interface do I want to use to be part of NLB. I'm going to choose the one that's labeled NLB. This is if both machines have the same load, this will get priority. When this computer boots, I want this service to be started. Now I'm going to create a shared IP that's going to be used on both machines. 172.16.8.100. Subnet mask is our normal subnet mask. Click OK. So once I configure www2, it'll have that same IP. I'm going to call this www.contoso.com. That's going to be the name that I'm going to associate with that IP. It's going to be for multicast. Unicast should work, but it sometimes gets screwy on these virtual machines, so I'm choosing multicast. Right now it's going to listen to all ports. I'm going to leave it alone, but really all I really need is port 443, which is HTTPS. But if you want to limit it to 443 on both of these TCP, that's fine. But I'm just going to leave it alone. Click Finish. I'm going to wait till this goes green before I move on. I'm going to pause the video. Okay, just went green as I paused. So I'm going to highlight my cluster and add a host to the cluster. So I'm going to, Google Voice just heard me. So I'm going to add www2. I know I can resolve that name. It's asking which interface do I want to use for NLB. I'm going to choose the NLB interface. This machine will be priority 2. I think I can use 32 machines in this cluster. The default state will be started. I don't need to add an IP to the cluster because it already added it when I created the cluster itself. I'm going to wait for a converged state. So each machine will have 2 network cards. One will be used strictly for NLB. The other one will be used for normal network traffic. And again, this might fail if you haven't installed NLB on www2. So while that is working, since I'm working on the west side, I'm just going to do this on the west side. I'm going to go to DC3. Excuse me, I'm working on the east side. So I'm going to do this on a DC on the east side. So I don't have to wait for replication. So I'm going to go to Tools, into DNS. I want to resolve www.contoso.com to our cluster IP. So I'm going to highlight contoso.com, say new host, www, and it's going to go to 8.100. And I'm also going to create a reverse record for it as well. So I can see I have a record for www and for 8.100. So if I open up NSLookup, I can type www.contoso.com. It comes back with an IP, set type equal PTR, then put in the IP address to make sure it comes back with the name. And it does. Exit out of this and exit out of the shell. So I'm going to go back to WW1. So now I'm at a converge state. I'm going to open up another command prompt. I can see my NLB interface now has two IPs, 8.5 and 8.100. It plays a trick with the networking. Let me show you. It added a driver for the NLB right here. And if I go to IPv4, properties in advance, I can see both IPs. So let's check out www2. In the book, they don't really talk about, or any of the classes talk about web servers, but trust me, as networkers, you are going to be dealing with a lot of web servers. You really need to be familiar with it. Again, my NLB interface has 8.6 and 8.100. That's a shared IP between both machines. So NLB is fully configured. I'm going to go back to WW1. So now I'm going to create some web content. So I'm going to do list. No, not Linux. dir, the top of my C drive. I now have a folder called inetpub that was created when I installed the web server. So in that folder, I'm going to make a directory called, I hit tab, guys. I don't have to specify the C drive because I'm already on it. Just type in the tab key, then type in my site. So we're going to create a folder called my site. Echo, this is a test page, into a file called inetpub my site index.html. We're just creating some content to host. I don't need some graphic text editor or anything like that. So I'm going to exit out of here and do the same thing for www2. This cluster has no replication. So the only way to keep the data consistent is you manually do it. So you need to make sure you host the same web content in both web servers. Otherwise, you'll have inconsistent results when different users connect. So I'm going to do make dir inetpub my site. Echo, this is a test. This is a test page. And redirect the output. Instead of echoing to my screen, I'm going to echo to a file inside of that folder called index.html. By default, when someone connects on port 443 to this machine, it's automatically going to send them index.html or start.html or default.html. So your page has to be either called index, start, or default. Normally it's called index. Okay, so I'm going to close this out, go back to 1. Now I'm going to host that website. Again, With this cluster, you need to configure both machines independently exactly the same. So before we can host a website, I need to grab a certificate for this website. Both machines will respond to the same name, www.contoso.com. Even though that's not the real name of the machine, that's going to be the name of our website. So I'm going to go into Server Certificates. I'm going to create a domain certificate. Now listen, if you were sending this off to a third party like VeriSign, you would go through this wizard, complete a request, save it on a thumb drive, use a secure carrier like Brinks or Iron Mountain to send it to your web certificate people. They'll take in your request, do what they need to do to verify your company, then send you back a certificate. Once you get it back securely, at that point, you come into this wizard, you put the thumb drive back in the machine, and you complete the request. You shouldn't do it over email, but I see a lot of people do it. I don't know why. So, since that's if you use a third-party certificate server, we're going to use our own certificate server. So we're going to create a domain certificate. This machine knows who the CA is from the domain controllers. So the common name will be www.contoso.com. Now this name has to match the name that they're going to type in the URL field. www.contoso.com is not the same as contoso.com. So if you do that, if you want to use both names, you're going to have to use a different procedure to create the certificate. You're going to have to go to the CA, manually create a certificate, and at that point, it will allow you to supply an alternate name like www.contoso.com and contoso.com. So both names are built into the certificate. If the name doesn't match what they type in the URL, you'll get a certificate error. The organizational unit is the organization is Contoso Limited, whatever. The web services division is requesting this. Guys, you can't use abbreviations. Microsoft will allow it, but third-party CAs, you have to type everything out. They even tell you, don't use abbreviations. But I know from experience that Microsoft, it'll work even if you do. But I'm not going to. Don't use abbreviations for the city and state. I'm going to choose RCA, and their friendly name is main site. Don't put www here because it'll be too confusing. You might have a bunch of certificates with that name. So try to use some name that's going to be recognizable in the list of certificates. Don't have it match the name they type in the URL, is my point. Click Finish. And there's my CA. I need to get this certificate over to the other machine. So I'm just going to go to contoso.com, public, go to wallpaper, and just have this open. So I'm going to highlight my certificate, then export it. Browse, contoso.com, public. Let me try this again. Contoso.com, public. I'm going to hit enter, choose wallpaper, and I'm going to call this main site. Click open, type in the password. If anyone gets it, they won't be able to do anything with it until they type in the password. I'm using our standard password. So I just exported that certificate that I'll use in the other machine eventually. So now I'm going to create the website and use that certificate. So I'm going to create it, add a website, whatever. That's just the name for this list. I'm going to browse to that folder, inetpub, my site. Inside of that folder is a file called index.html. I'm going to use HTTPS, and the host name will be www.contoso.com. Then I'm going to choose that certificate. See why I want you to use that friendly name? So it's there. You can have it tell it not to use the OCSP to verify the certificate. We don't want to do that. We want to make sure that this machine verifies that that certificate hasn't been revoked. Click OK. So let's do the same exact thing for, and there you can see my certificate is saved on the web server, on the file server. I'm going to go to www.2, go to IIS, go to server certificates, and import the server certificate. Click the three buttons, contoso.com, public. I hit enter, go to wallpaper. I just put it there just to have it convenient. In real life, I would use a thumb drive or something, uh, carry it over to, securely from one machine to another. Type in the password, and I'm going to put it in web hosting store. We have multiple locations where we can store certificates. It could be a personal certificate or one for web hosting. I'm going to leave this checked, so if someone wanted to export from this machine to take it to another machine, that can happen. So there I've imported that certificate. So now I have one certificate being used on both machines that matches our common name that's shared between those two machines. So I'm going to host a website, add a website, whatever. I have everything identical. Browse to my web content on this machine. My site, HTTPS 443. Type in our common name. That's going to be the name that's resolvable by DNS to our cluster IP 172.16.8.100, and it's also going to be the name they type in the URL. Choose the certificate, click OK. Now we're going to test it. I'm going to type HTTPS www.contoso.com. This is a test page. Do I know which machine I'm connecting to? www1 or www2? No, they both have the same content. If I click on the little padlock, I'm going to view the certificate. I could click on details. There's information. Listen, if you use the CA to generate this certificate or use PowerShell to generate this certificate, you can have an optional name here. I don't have one, I only have one name. If I look at the certificate path, this certificate was issued by that certificate. So everything is working. Guys, just one other thing I want to show you. I'm going to go back to my CA to do this. I'm going to open up, actually I'm going to hit Control R, well maybe not. I'm going to right click and go run. I'm going to type in mmc.exe. For some reason, if I just type it in the search bar, it doesn't show up. It doesn't open. Guys, if I wanted to create a custom console for each user, they can open up the certificate snap-in. I could do it for my user account, a service account, to start a service, or my computer account. I'm just going to do my user account. Click OK. And they can use this to create certificates, to request certificates. I could do find certificate uh, in the whole store. I'm just doing this for giggles. There's a certificate for um, a certificate authority on the internet. I could highlight personal, all task, request certificates, and any certificate that I qualify for, I'm going to use this policy to request a certificate. Anything that I qualify for, I can get. Click enroll. So I just requested those certificates. There's all my personal certificates, what their purpose is for. If I rebooted this machine, it would have automatically got those anyways, because we have auto enroll done. But since I didn't reboot and re-sign in, it didn't request them yet. No big deal. But I just want to kind of give you this tool that you can use this tool to request certificates as well. There's also, I could go to a website. But I can't remember the name. Guys, if you can't remember the name of a website, you can always go to IIS. And the one I want is cert server. So I can go into HTTPS, because it's secure, ca.contoso.com / that it's called a virtual website. It's under the main website. The certificate, I don't know what the name is actually. I gotta look at the certificate name, but or I could request one for this particular site. But let me go through it and figure it out. So I'm gonna go certificate. Yeah, I need to request one for this web server. I'm not going to bother doing it right now, but uh, actually I'm going to do it. So I'm going to go to here, request a certificate, create a domain certificate. The common name will be ca.contoso.com. The organization will be Contoso Limited. Web Services is requesting it. That's the department. It's in Davie, Florida. The CA I want to get it from is RCA. Their friendly name is Cert Server. So now I'm going to go back to my website, go to bindings, highlight this, edit, and I'm going to use that certificate. And the name will be ca.contoso.com. So I'm going to try to refresh this. No, I'm not. I'm going to put the CA back. I'm going to sign in with Contoso admin. Your user would sign in with their username. This is a web application that was installed when we installed the certificate server. And so now we're secure. I can request certificates this way as well. If I didn't have auto enroll, every time someone enrolled as a domain admin, I would have to go to the certificate authority, go to pending request, and approve those pending requests. We did auto enroll, so we don't have to do that because this will work you to death. I can look at issued certificates. I'm trying to find my web server. Here is the one for the CA. Here's one for www. So everything is secure. You know, if you want to use this method to get certificates, you can. If you want to use the MMC method, you can use that as well. Either way, everything is secure. We had to request a certificate for this website, not using the one that was generated for the CA. But guys, this is the last lab. As soon as you're done with this, you're done with all the labs. So I'm going to close this video out, and I will see you in our next live session. Thank you.